Hey guys, this is Nathanael Weiscup here with my wife Carolyn, and we would like to do a deck profile for Calvin, but we're going to do something special with this deck profile, and we're going to explain to you how to build an Animo deck. So, one of the things that you have to first start doing when you're going to build a deck is you have to decide what you're going to build your deck around. So, for instance, with my faith deck, I wanted to build my deck around using Stagnetic over and over and over again with his ability, so that way I don't have to pay his activation cost whenever I send him out to get virtue points or activate him. Now, so for this deck, what we're deciding to do is, since there's three different win conditions in this game, the first win condition is using getting 60 virtue points, defeating 6 Cinnies the second one, and the third one is having your opponent deck out. Well, making your opponent discard their deck isn't actually very reliable, since that depends on your opponent. Getting 60 virtue points is probably the fastest and most reliable way to win. But then defeating 6 Cinnies is actually kind of more difficult, because your opponent is the one who really decides that. Your opponent will probably only play 5 Cinnies on you, and then you'll never be able to defeat that 6th one, which makes you resort to having to have 60 virtue points. However, Calvin is very special. Calvin says has a victory condition, which says win by defeating 5 Cinnies. Now, your opponent is really forced to limit the number of Cinnies that they can play against you, so they'll probably only play 4 against you during a game. But you have to make them want to play the Cinnies against you, which means you have to be able to have a lot of Animo that have a lot of power to score you as many virtue points as possible, so they'll want to slow you down with as many Cinnies as possible. So we chose to build our deck around Calvin. Calvin is very strong because he first off provides a love, and second off he changes your win con. So your win condition is now going to be defeating 5 Cinnies. Now, one of the first things that you really have to think about is, when you're building a deck, how much power do you really need in a deck? So Calvin provides 1 love, so the majority of our deck is really going to be based on love. So we're going to run mostly love Animo in this deck. However, since Calvin provides 1 love, we're going to go ahead and we're going to need more love to back that up. But we're only ever going to need a total of 4 love in play for this deck to really properly work. So we're going to go ahead and run just 3 love, and then we have to choose a secondary power in order to use more Animo in this deck. So while we think about it, the only you can use any type of Animo, like you can use Universal Animo or Faith Animo, Hope Animo, but we chose to use Holy Spirit Animo for this deck. And the reason why we chose to use the Holy Spirit power cards is because the Holy Spirit Animo, they only really ever have 1 specified cost on any of them. So they are probably the most splashable, or probably the most reliable secondary Animo choice that you could think of. So we're using Holy Spirit Animo. Now, whenever you're building a deck, you need to have access to power cards. And so we're using Raspberry, who has an action that says you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you get to place any power cards you find there directly into your power pool. And then you get to shuffle your deck. We're also using Testify from set 1, because Testify is free, so it doesn't require a power. So you send out Testify to search your deck for any power card and add it to your hand. And then we're using 3 Opolis. And we're using 3 Opolis because Opolis has the ability called Offering, so you can discard her from your small group. And when you do, you get to search your deck for a love power card and place it directly into your power pool. So this right here provides most of the power for the deck. The other component that you need to have is Animo, or cards that search for other Animo. Because you don't just need power cards in order to win games, you need Animo themselves. And so we have these Animo, which search for other Animo. Lily is great. Lily is the Animo that you use if you are using the Holy Spirit with any faith, hope, or love Animo in your deck. Because its action is you go search for any level 1 faith, hope, or love Animo. So we're going to be using Lily to go grab our love Animo. Harmony is also really good because Harmony has an ability that if you put her into your small group, while there's another Harmony, but is a Holy Spirit Harmony, you get to search your deck for a Harmony level 2, which has 12 virtue points on it, and only cost 1 love and 1 Holy Spirit. So Harmony is really good. We are also using 2 Paul's Chains. Paul's Chains is a very good card. It searches up to 2 level 1 Animo of any level 1 Animo, so it can grab Ultras, and it puts them into your small group. Paul's Chains is one of those cards that we highly recommend for any deck, and it doesn't require any special kind of Animo. It just requires that the Animo that you equip this card to not be able to be activated anymore. So you can still use its ability, and you can still use Paul's Chains while it's attacked, but that Animo cannot be sent out to get you virtue points. We're also using the Bible Study Love. Because our deck is primarily love, we're going to use the Bible Study for Love to go grab any of our love Animo, which is very, very effective. Now, to search for any card that we need in our deck, we have Snakebit. Snakebit, again, is one of those cards that is very strong in any deck. When you play it, you have to skip your score phase. But when you're falling behind or your opponent has played like the Cine Evo on you, you're going to get stuck. And so you might as well go ahead and play Snakebit during the turn that you can't do anything. That way you can search your deck for any 4 cards, add them to your hand, and typically we like to grab Paul's Chains and Servitude or any of our other strong utility cards that searches for any card. Especially when you use it to grab Paul's Chains, because when you use Paul's Chains is basically grabbing a 5th card for you. So Snakebit is very strong. We recommend it for any deck. We also run Accountability. The main reason why we run Accountability specifically in this deck is because Calvin requires your opponent to play 5 Cines on you. Most likely your opponent is only going to play 4 Cines on you, giving you a chance to get more virtue points, but you're going to use this Accountability specifically to grab Scorpoon from your deck later on. Since that way, you can use Scorpoon to force your opponent to play another Cine on you from their discard pile, and then you'll just go ahead and defeat it, having defeated 5 Cines. Now, as I mentioned, you have to have a lot of Animo that have a lot of power really quickly. And so, we're using Saltini Ultra. Saltini Ultra is pretty good because it costs 2 specific love and 1 universal. So you can use 2 love and 1 Holy Spirit to pay for it, and it gives you 11 points, which is pretty fair. Especially compare that to Agape Soar Ultra. Agape Soar Ultra gives you 13 points, but requires you to use 3 love specific to activate it. So these are our 2 ultras for the deck. Now we have 2 Shine Sparks. You'll notice that the artwork on these 2 Shine Sparks are different because this is the original Shine Spark and this is the reprinted Shine Spark. I personally really like both of them because I think they both have their artwork just value, just because this one looks newer, it looks fresher. But I really like how cute this one looks compared to this one. Of course, that's your preference. Now, the reason why we use Shine Spark is because Shine Spark, if you pay 2 love, it will give you +3, making it a total of 8 virtue points when you send it out or activate it. But you could also pay 2 universal, so if you just have 2 Holy Spirit ready, you can just send it out for the 5 points. But you could also, instead of running Shine Spark, you could run Fairly in this deck. We just don't have any extra Fairlies right now. Now, to help keep up with the rush, we have Tweetheart. Thank you. Tweetheart costs 1 love and has a fellowship bonus of 6. So if you send it out with a Holy Spirit Animo, you're going to get 6 virtue points compared to the 3, which is a 1 for 6 is a very good value. And then, along also with our fellowship, we have Saltini. So you have Saltini level 1, who is a 5 for 2, which is just a very even-based card. Fair value. But then you have a 2 for 10 in Saltini level 2 that Saltini level 1 can grow up to. Now, it also has a fellowship bonus of 14, which a 2 for 14, now that's just broken. It's really strong. So this is one of the reasons why we went in the direction of using the Holy Spirit, is because a 2 for 14 is just good. Now, also, back when we had the Love Harmony, now we have the Holy Spirit Harmony. And along with the Holy Spirit Harmony, we're going to have the Harmony level 2, which is a universal Animo, but it goes ahead and it helps you out with just getting a 2-point value for 12. So you pay 2 as the cost, and you get 12 virtue points. This is really strong, and you can use the level 1 Harmony, that's Love, while you have this one out in play to search for this one. And then you can just grow one of the 2 harmonies into this one. So this is a lot of value. Very good value. And of course, because this deck is primarily about defeating Cinnies, you're going to want to use Agape Soar. So Agape Soar level 1 has an ability that we can't use in this deck. But that's okay, because we're primarily using Agape Soar level 1 to use Agape Soar level 2. But because we can't really use the ability at level 1, that's the reason why this one is a copy of 1 and 1. It is a 2 for 10, which is really good. But also, you can notice its ability is that Agape Soar gets added to the weakness of any Cinny that your opponent has. So I would highly recommend running at least one of these in your love decks. And since you're using it with Calvin, you just have to memorize this one Bible verse, and you can keep this one out in play, and your opponent just might not even play Cinnies on you after that. But if you keep Agape Soar level 2 in your hand, and you play him when your opponent does have a Cinny out there, you'll be able to use Agape Soar's ability to quote Agape Soar level 2's Bible verse to defeat any Cinny that's out there. And then you'll go ahead and pay your 2, send out, and get your 10 virtue points. Now, to help you out with defeating more Cinnies, we have Floraline. Floraline is really strong. As a 7 for 3, that's fair value. I typically would like to see an 8 on that, but this one grows, so I can understand why it doesn't have that extra virtue point on there. But when it grows into Floraline level 2. Floraline level 2 says that if you're facing a Cinny, this card has no activation cost, which means Floraline level 2 is a prime target to helping you achieve this victory condition of defeating 5 Cinnies. Now, one of the things that we wanted to show you in deck building is True-Blue. True-Blue is extremely valuable because, first off, True-Blue just has an ability that says you can exchange it from your small group with one level 1 virtuous Animo in your discard pile. And you can't do it to an Ultra Animo, but you can do it to, say, go grab your Agape Soar. And so that way you can grow on top of it. You can use it to go grab your Floorline level 1, or you can go ahead and use it to go grab your Servidude, your Potpourris, or your Potpourris, and maybe your Saltini level 1. Just anything that has instant value, you can go ahead and grab. We use Servidude. Servidude is another one of those cards that we consider extremely splashable in any deck. You will probably never use this card, activate this card to gain its 8 virtue points, but it has an ability that says that you may draw 1 card for each of your Faith, Hope, or Holy Spirit Animo in your small group. And it has so much value just because if you get 3 Holy Spirit Animo out there, you can just use it to draw 3 cards, which that in itself is just very strong. I highly recommend you run at least 1 Servitude in each of your decks. This is the Belt of Truth. This is the Belt of Truth from set 2. There's a Belt of Truth from set 1 that we could have ran. But this one says that when it is attached to a love Animo, you instantly get to draw 2 cards. So, and then it has a second ability. It says once per turn, as long as this card is attached to an Animo, you may look at the top 4 cards of your deck. And when you do, you get to put them back in any order you like. So this is really strong with Raspberry. Because Raspberry, you're going to send it out, it has an action, and once you activate Raspberry, that action kicks off and you don't know what the top 3 cards of your deck are. But with the Belt of Truth, you get a look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you can go ahead and organize them. If you have power cards there, you can put those power cards on top, activate your Raspberry, and then all of those power cards will just go to your power pool based on Raspberry's action. So I highly recommend the Belt of Truth. The Belt of Truth from set 1 works the same way, but it only looks at the top 3 cards, and it can be attached to any Animo. So it might be better in some instances. We just think in this deck, with searching for the top 4, that this one would be a better option since we are already running primarily Love. Now, in any deck, you're going to find that you're going to have a problem with running into Cinis. Because some Cinis have actions. And those actions, like Evil just says you can't activate any of your love Animo. And so you can either focus on your Holy Spirit Animo for that turn, or you can focus on sending out your Harmony level 2 that turn. But probably the most value you're going to get is if you just play Potpourris, and when you do, that action from Evil is just going to be canceled out, and it's not going to stop you. So that's going to be really strong. So typically, a turn that you use Snakebit and you think your opponent's going to use Evil on you, you're going to go ahead and use Potpourris, so that way you can continue with your main strategy. Now, since this Calvin's deck is based around defeating Cinis, we also are going to need Cinis. And sometimes we're going to need our Cinis to be out there just a little bit longer. And so Paul's Thorn, you can attach it to anything that's not a Mega. And every single virtuous Animo that is played against this Cini that this is attached to, it loses 2 virtue points. So this is going to help reduce your opponent's ability to defeat that Cini very quickly. Now, we run for our Ultra, or our last Ultra Mega of this deck is a Mega Cini called Scorch Mega. Scorch Mega has a defense of 16, which is really strong. Its weakness is Spark Cube, and this is just a big Cini. And big Cinis help stall out your opponent from instantly defeating you. Now, you want to run Cinis in this deck that your opponent wants to defeat. So Cinis have 2 different real values. One is hindering your opponent from playing the game, and the other one is making it so that your opponent really wants to defeat the Cini. So your opponent really wants to defeat Screeny. Screeny basically sits out there and hinders your opponent's Truth Seeker. Their Truth Seeker cannot activate their ability. So they're just sitting there on a Truth Seeker they can't even use, which means they want to defeat Cinny as soon as possible, or Screeny as soon as possible. Zapper King. Zapper King is one of the main main 5 Animo that hinders a type of Animo your opponent can play from their hand or activate it. Zapper King prevents your opponent from playing any level 1 Animo from their hand. So a turn that your opponent sends out all the Animo in their small group, you can play Zapper King, and unless they're using Sadie or Professor, they're just not going to be able to play any Animos from their hand. So you use Zapper King to hinder them from doing that. Grasshopper. Grasshopper has an action. It says, when played, your opponent reveals their hand. You select one card in their hand and shuffle it back into the deck. There are a lot of players that really like to just use Snakebit to grab every single card they need to win the game. And if you reveal Grasshopper, you look at their hand, you can discard the one key Animo or card from their hand, and they have to shuffle that card back into their deck. So Grasshopper really, I want to say, punishes players for using Snakebit and thinking that they can just get away with it. This guy, Scorpoon. Scorpoon has an action, and Scorpoon's action is if you are not already facing a Cinny, your opponent must reveal a Cinny from their discard pile if they have one and play it against you. So this is how you get your opponent to play that 5th Cinny. Your opponent will probably use 4 against you, and your deck is going to be, I want to use the word aggressive. And it's basically about getting as many points as possible as fast as possible. And so you're going to go ahead and let your opponent keep playing Cinnies against you because your goal is to defeat 5 Cinnies. Or you're just going to gain 60 points and win anyhow. Now your opponent's going to play only 4 Cinnies against you because of Calvin, and this is actually going to limit their ability of hindering your game. But for that last Cinny, they're going to take any Cinnies that they draw after you've already defeated 4, and they're just going to discard them. And so that's when you play Scorpoon. And Scorpoon's just going to go ahead and make them choose one of their Cinnies in their discard pile and make you face it. And once you face that Cinny, you're going to go ahead and just defeat that Cinny and win by defeating 5 Cinnies. Now, there are some decks that are faster than Calvin's deck, and so you have to hinder those decks. And so the main cards that you use to hinder other decks are going to be Scawfish and Kroggle. Now, you could also run, say, Scorch if you play against mostly Hope Animo. Or if you play against mostly Love Animo, you can use Evil. Or if you play against mostly Universal, you can use Discriminator. But we use Scawfish and Kroggle because the Faith deck is probably faster than this deck. Because once it uses Snakebit and it grabs its 4 Stagnetics and Armorina Ultra, once it has its 3 power cards, they're going to gain 46 points in a single turn. And then they're just going to keep recycling their Stagnetics, so you use Kroggle to prevent them from recycling their Stagnetics using Treblu or Shake and Break. You're also going to use Scawfish to just stop them from using their Faith Animo for a turn, so that way you can get caught back up. The last Cinny that we run is Provokupine. Provokupine is actually a Cinny that you want your opponent to defeat. The reason why is it searches your deck for any card, and that can be valuable. And so if you can't find accountability to go grab your Scorpoon, you can use Provokupine to go grab Scorpoon. So I highly recommend that you consider running Provokupine, just because grabbing just one card is pretty good. It only has a defense of 7, but having a defense of 7 is okay because you want your opponent to defeat this quickly, so that way you can grab the card that you need. So, now there are actually a lot of options that you can go with Calvin, such as if you choose to run Calvin with Hope Animo, Hope Animo, you can run a Reflexor. A Reflexor gives 6 virtue points. And then with those 6 virtue points, it also has an action that lets you search your deck for any sinning added to your hand. So Hope would be a good option for this. Hope also has a lot of fellowship with love. And so you can go ahead and use just a bunch of fellowship Animo to gain a lot of points very quickly, which makes your opponent wants to play more Sinnies against you so that way they can slow you down. Now, for you to get a good view of this deck, we're going to go ahead and show you the full deck. All right. This way you can get a full view of the deck. All right, so this is the full Love and Holy Spirit deck using Calvin's victory condition defeating 5 Sinnies. Guys, go ahead and comment below and ask and make suggestions for us. Let us know what you think of this deck, things that you would change out for this deck. Because this deck could use improvement, but this is a good deck to show you how to build your deck around a win condition. All right, so just when you're building a deck, keep in mind that you're trying to build your deck around doing the one thing that your deck is supposed to do. So just try various different things, play test, and then just see how the deck feels. See if it works for you, and then let us know. And then we can make changes to our deck, because as a community, we grow by challenging each other. And seeing how different people play the game helps us grow as players as well. Anyways, so God bless, and you guys have a great day, all right?